All right, so Soulardarity 101. Why are we here? We are going to be going over where do we want to go, what is standing in our way, and how are we going to get there? So Soulardarity started out of necessity when Highland Park residents were left in the dark by DTE Energy's repossession of over 1,000 streetlights in 2011. This was at a time when former Governor Rick Snyder had instituted the emergency financial manager system in various communities across the state. And it should be mentioned that it mainly happened in marginalized frontline communities of color like Detroit, Highland Park, Flint, and other places as well too. And this was to basically to have the purpose of getting their budgets back in order. And unfortunately, the streetlights were identified as part of the city's budget that they felt it was necessary to cut in order to get Highland Park back on fiscal track. So when that happened, we came together, and it was with the simple goal of restoring light to the darkness in our neighborhoods. The street lights that were taken away were all from the residential areas, not from the main corridors. And the effects of it was very, very obvious because it was happening where people live. And 10 years later, we have become a locally and nationally recognized leader in energy democracy. If you haven't seen us recently on the Today Show, we'll be sharing the link to that eventually at some point. But yeah, we've got a little bit of national recognition about our work, and so we're going to keep doing that. So the stakes are high. Highland Park stands on the cusp of redevelopment, and it needs to make sure during that redevelopment opportunities, it has to be centered around community benefits. Michigan also stands at a critical crossroads between new gas-based monopoly-controlled energy infrastructures and community-owned distributed energy and efficiency. Especially, at this time on a government level, on a state government level, Governor Gretchen Whitmer has expressed the need for us to start moving in a renewable energy direction, both on a private and a public level. So we're hoping that with these new intentions on a state level, we want to take advantage of every opportunity that comes along our way. That's also the same with the federal government as well too. And all of which we'll also be talking about for some of you in our breakout rooms. Nationally, the investor-owned utility system is in crisis, and it's failing to address climate change and equity. So how is Soulardarity's goal focused around energy democracy? And what is energy democracy? It's an energy system governed by and for the people, and that uplifts sustainability and self-determination. In our efforts to organize around energy democracy, our base is primarily the working class Black community of Highland Park and surrounding neighborhoods of Detroit, Hamtramck, and beyond. And we are driving ourselves focused on our theory of change, which is that our communities will lead those just solutions to climate change if we shift economic and political power towards our communities. We also need to build and fight by creating solutions, fighting the threats that we face, and also changing the structures of. Our primary opposition is DTE Energy. That is our main boogeyman. All of you are familiar with it in one way or another. And it's, as you probably have noticed, they are a massive and also a regressive investor-owned monopoly energy utility. And their purpose is to basically profit their shareholders. They are a private corporation that likes to paint themselves as a public utility, but unfortunately they are not, because public utility is supposed to be providing the best quality of service as a public service to its ratepayers. Instead, they are fighting local clean energy efficiency and community ownership tooth and nail, unless they're the ones that are guaranteed that they're going to be getting the majority cut of the profits. And of course, that will be on the backs of our base. Their main weapons of choice are the following: lobbying and political giving. It does not matter what party or what parties are out there, they will give money to both if they stand to see that they are going to benefit off of that. They have given both to Democrats and to Republicans in one way or another because they love to hedge their bets. They are not a partisan company. They are only focused on profit. That is their political power, their political party. They also engage in tactical philanthropy. What that means is that when you're out there in the community, when you're seeing events, when you're seeing special projects happening, odds are you're going to see on some big vinyl banner that is attached to a fence, you're going to see their logo, their branding on it, sponsored by DTE Energy. And they're hoping that when you see that, you get the nice fuzzies when you and you're hoping that they're hoping that it will send a message to you that they're the good guys, they're on your side, we're investing in your community, when in reality they're only investing barely a fraction of what they hold in their profits. It is just a small investment to drive a greater level of profit generation. Also, dark money front groups. What that means is that they use the complicated financial contribution system of our government to funnel money to various different causes or candidates that will pursue and progress their personal agenda. Also, they love to turn communities against each other. One of the most common things that you will see, in a dysfunctional community, is infighting. And it's because of them. It is because they put out tactical messaging that is going to basically be used against other groups, trying to paint organizations, activists as the bad guys. And it's not just a tactic of DTE, it is a tactic that is commonly used all over the country and all over the world. So it is our job to fight through that fog and to establish those common lines of connections to remind people we are one and the same, and we are facing the same issues. And they wield power at the legislature, public service commission, and in our communities with these weapons. So what is it that we need to do to shift that power? We need to develop leadership and grow the base along the way. We need to build solutions that build power. We need to create space for community action, and we need to fight for policy and regulatory change. So what are we going to do to get there? What you're seeing here right now is our current structure of Soulardarity, the organizational structure. Like Shamika will share this thought as well too, but please don't let the orientation and the placement of these bubbles miscommunicate to you that the whole bottom up or top down kind of thing. Membership is not really at the bottom. Our membership are the people that help drive the directions that we go into. The reason why we do that is because if we are not going to be taking their cue, then we are not going to be building momentum. We need to be addressing our campaigns according to the needs of the community. Out of that membership, we create volunteer leadership, and they go into multiple different directions. Let's start with the left here. Volunteer leadership goes into our state scale energy democracy focused work. What that is I've already probably explained it to you in your interviews. It is work that is focused to achieve energy affordability, public health, and community-owned clean energy targeted at the DTE and the Michigan Public Service Commission and the legislature. It is very policy focused. It also leads into our Grow Solar Highland Park work. What Grow Solar Highland Park is, it's a solar bulk purchase program and public education that makes going solar easy and affordable. Before I start getting into the center portion here, let's move over to the right here. So our membership, going back again to our membership, it is a circle of people that are a little bit more engaged, and they are starting to get into the ongoing leadership development in our governance, our organizing, and our energy democracy focused work that is within our internal structure in order to grow collective capacity. And then it also feeds into our Highland Park campaign, a campaign to make Highland Park, Michigan, a global model of sustainability and self-determination targeted at the city of Highland. And then you'll see in the center the more internalized areas. So our membership always has the right to vote and give input in what we do. And that is funneled and channeled through our board. Our board currently, as it stands, has 5 members. They're all elected by the membership, and they also help govern through policy that is established through their interaction, through their participation and approval. And this must be through a majority of Highland Parkers as well too. The majority representation of the board are HP folks. They also guide and develop our ends and means policies. That leads us into policy governance, which is us, the executive director and staff. We coordinate and plan our actions. We are directed by board policy, and we support membership leadership by growing it and training. So all of these areas right here are what I just went over in terms of membership. We have our quarterly meetings, we practice democracy, and we also build community. With GSHP Detroit, we have our rooftop solar, our energy efficiency and home repair, and also community solar as well too. And then Highland Park, we are focused on our street lights. We are focused on electoral civic engagement, and we are focused on sustainable development. And then on our state level energy democracy, we are focused on regulatory advocacy, public pressure campaigns, coalition building for policy. All right, so membership and fundraising. It's not always fun to ask people for money, but there is a very strong purpose for it. Our base, we do recognize that our base is financially struggling. So why are we asking them for money? Because we need to build power, and we need to recognize the fact that we organize around power through money sometimes. So foundation and corporate giving are the table scraps of the wealthy. They will never follow us everywhere. We need to go in pursuit of our mission, because our mission is about changing the balance of power, and the people with the most money, they like that power. So organizations that get a substantial part of their budget in gifts from their base are more accountable to their base and can continue and can pursue a more radical agenda. So more grassroots fundraising equals more autonomy and accountability to our base. That means we get to do what we want to do at all times. And members contribute to the organization with time, talent, and treasure or money. And this helps enable them to control the organization through their contributions. All right. Questions? Do we have any questions so far? Comments, thoughts about the 101s of Soulardarity? Reactions?
Are you still there?
I am. All right.
I would
Okay.
ask, I would want to ask the room, how many of y'all knew all of that stuff already? And what parts of it was new to you?
I didn't know a lot of that. A lot of that was new to me.
Who was that?
I knew
I'm
it.
sorry. Oh,
This is
this is Siobhan?
Stacey.
Okay.
Yes, that was me. That was Siobhan, sorry.
Gotcha. Well, it's okay.
So I think I definitely knew the general story. It was good to see more about like the history and how it got started. And I think generally I don't know that it was necessarily new, but I am intrigued kind of by, I've been a part of several different organizations, and like the membership model is really interesting, where it's like the way in which somebody becomes a member and the different levels of involvement for membership. And I saw that there were kind of like two different sections labeled membership, like the bottom part with all the arrows, and then there was the part in the bottom right that also was membership. I guess I was curious about that distinction and the pathway of that distinction, because I can understand how membership as a larger community that supports Soulardarity is one thing, but then of course there seems to be a subset of that is, membership, on a more engaged level. I just was curious about that, like the usage of membership in those two sections and how they differ, or if they are the same, in fact.
I can answer that, Raph or Michelle, but also if y'all want to answer it, that's cool too.
No, please go ahead. Give my voice a break.
Okay, no problem. So that diagram reflects our bottom-up organizing model. And as Raphael said, like membership is our base. We always start there. Everything that has been done in Soulardarity has been either through a request from a membership meeting or a part of a few activities that we have throughout the year, participatory budgeting. We used to have all-star action team where folks got to submit ideas and actually pull together a team of members that would actually execute that idea. And when we have membership a little higher up, that's more like our programmatic work. We've been trying to really build in membership as a program, mainly because we would like to, Rafael and I was just talking about this the other day, we're an organization that's not just trying to stay in business for the next 30 years. We're actually trying to put ourselves out of a job. And so in order to do that, we have to become sustainable. We can't just rely on grants. We can't just rely on, just the status quo kind of way nonprofits are ran, here in Michigan and around the country. That it not only is our membership our base, but it actually has to be a strategy around organizing our members in a way that provides leadership opportunities and sustainability financially for the organization. So that's why it gets its own little, I guess, kind of starry circle. I guess we could call that a starry circle. But that's a distinction there. And our membership program area is ran by Lex. And that's where you get an opportunity to really plug in as a volunteer. It's where you get an opportunity to be a little bit more engaged strategically, as opposed to just being a part of, our broad-based membership.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that brings me to my next point, is that the one thing that never stops in this kind of work, like the one thing that is always being engaged, is the recruitment stages. You're always recruiting people. You're always bringing people into, your cause. It may not be known immediately how engaged that they will be with the organization, but sometimes that very first step of engagement and recruitment is the most important step in your organization. And that is the process that happens the most in any kind of community-based organization. Recruitment. So that will be one small but very important activity that y'all will be engaged in this experience in one way or another.
Can I?
All right. Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead, please.
I'm not. I don't know if it's too late to share feedback because one thing that I picked up in just what we've covered thus far, and there's like a spectrum, right? Like there are people who will never join the organization, however, they're in a position to contribute. You know what I mean? There's the regular person who's they're not gonna come to meetings, they're not gonna come to this, but they're gonna be voting on some of the issues. They're listening to us. As we educate the community and making, their activism may never leave outside the confines of their homes, but when it comes to elections, when it comes to even just driving conversation in the community, that idea of strategy, that idea of being able to communicate, this is a strategy. There are a million organizations that have come to our city and said that they were there to serve the people without being able to communicate a real strategy. I think there were certain like multi-billion-dollar organizations taking money for Haiti, but only releasing a little bit of the money to Haiti. And that's just an example of, us not understanding the strategy. So we contributed to something. And I'm saying we, using the term we loosely, but my point is in terms of what Soulardarity is doing, one of the things that was attractive to me is the ability to communicate a real strategy to people so they understand this is what's messed up. Everybody understands the problem. Nobody thinks that DTE is a saint, but how do we impact change with DTE, and being able to communicate how we're doing what we're doing, I think is a big, big, big piece of the puzzle. Excuse me.
No need to be excused there, Prostel, because you're absolutely right. And the thing that was resonating the most for me in terms of my reaction to your words is accountability and transparency. Accountability and transparency is so important when you're doing work like this, because the people that you're organizing with and for on their behalf, they need to build trust in what you're doing. And one excellent example, and there was one of the reasons why we like the word energy democracy, is that we try to create as many democratic opportunities as possible, and that includes, our budget, parts of our budget. We do this thing called participatory budgeting, which is something that we didn't invent. It's something that is being put into practice in various different capacities all around the world, where we create a pool of money that is left up, that has not been, yet put into, critical like operations for the organization. And we leave it up to our members to decide, how do we use this money? What should we be focusing on in this upcoming year with this budget? And that is not just for the goal of having them help us create guidance and focus, but it is to demonstrate to them that we want accountability and transparency to be present in a lot of the processes and the work that we take, that we want to assure them we are fighting a mission that they are guiding. Anything else? No? All right. Sounds good. So everybody gets a quick 5-minute break. We went a little bit over, but actually surprisingly not by much that I was expecting. So we're not doing too bad here on time. But I want to give everybody an opportunity for a quick break, whether if it's to refill your coffee mug or to your water, or take a quick bio break, step outside, whatever. But I'd like to keep it to 5 minutes because time is important. So I'm going to play this really weird YouTube video of things getting pressed by a hydraulic presser, and it has a little 5-minute timer. So keep an eye on it because we will be starting back over again on our next section right at the end of that clock. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Or not. Or not. Okay, maybe not. All right, 5-minute break starts now, with or without the video. Not sure why this isn't playing.
The thing that's different about a verbal vacation home you always have the whole place to yourself.
All right, y'all. I don't know if you could see all that cool stuff getting smushed, but I never get sick and tired of watching stuff get crushed by a hydraulic press. I think I've only seen one thing survive a hydraulic press and actually break it, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it was so damn cool to see that happen.
I'm glad I'm not the only one obsessed with these little compression videos.
Yeah, no, man, there's something so pleasing about watching a candle get absolutely crushed and watching it just explode everywhere in these weird stringy pieces. All right. Okay, so can I get a thumbs up either on screen or in the chat or through a reaction that y'all are here? Who is here?
I'm in here. Thumbs up if y'all can see me.
All right. Okay. Cool. Cool. Perfect.
Chuck is here.
Excellent. All right, welcome back, guys. I hope that 5-minute break made you a little bit more comfortable. So for the next hour, we're going to be talking about what is a community organizer. And Michelle and I, will be leading this part of the presentation here. So I think we've got everybody here. We're ready to go. Yep, I'm seeing some really good responses in the chat and in the reactions camera. So yeah, all right, let's go. So one of my favorite, first of all, this picture right here was one of many pictures taken at our anti-DTE community rally that was held at Avalon Village. Avalon Village may be familiar to some of you. It is a beautiful and amazing space in Highland Park that is, accessible to the community. It has a basketball court. It has little shops like the Goddess Market. It has a STEM a lab. It has a homework house, and it is also home for some solar-powered streetlights that Soulardarity installed there. So if you haven't been there before, if you've never heard of it before, or if you have and you just haven't been there yet, pop on by, say hi to Mama Shu. She's the one who started it and runs it. She's a beautiful human being. It's on Avalon Street, right near Woodward Avenue in Highland Park.
They can also look on YouTube. There's videos of Mama Shu on YouTube because she don't be there as much these days. But yeah.
She's getting a little bit more on social media. All right, so one of my favorite definitions of what is a community organizer comes from the Indigenous Learning Institute for Community Empowerment. It is the purpose of community organizing is to create a new awareness towards the marginalized and oppressed community and to build a structure that is based on the people. So before we get a little bit into it, I know that I had, discussions with all of you either, in the past week or in the past. Some of you have already done some community organizing work in some form or fashion. I'm sure every single one of you have without even realizing it. But let's do a little exercise here first. Let's try defining it together. And I want everybody to participate, give a 10-second, right off the top of your head definition of what you think is a community organizer. To try not to be too unfair to some of our newer folks, I'm going to start off with Prostel. So Prostel, what is a community organizer to you? How do you define a community organizer?
I was going to let them speak first so I could just say what they said in a different way. I believe that a community organizer is someone who is a lot of things. First of all, in order to be a community organizer, like you have to build community. I believe a big part of it is connecting people to resources. So like, even if you go all the way back to the example of like my grandmama see chicken on sale at the grocery store, and she tell all the other ladies on the block or families on the block. To me, I believe that's like a sense of community organizer. So I think you have to serve the people. And I think ultimately it has to be centered around the community agenda as opposed to the individual agenda. Like all of us have individual agendas, but I think if we're talking about community organizing, we're not putting our individual agenda ahead of what the community wants or what benefits the community. Which, I mean, also at that point you talk about having conversations, because the community has to reach some sort of consensus, not me doing what I think is best for the community, but me having a conversation with the community and us reaching some type of level ground with each other. I also think you have to have consent. One more thing, I think you also have to have consent from the community to be a community organizer. I can't go and organize in a community that I'm not a part of. I don't think that's ethical. But either way, I'm sorry. I'm thinking off the top of my head.
That's good. Be from community. All right. So I'm going to choose somebody random here. How about Rob? How would you define a community organizer?
So a lot of great points that Prostel made. I'll try my best to go beyond that, but it was a pretty good definition. But
it's okay to repeat as well too. That's fine.
Yeah. So I think of a community organizer as like a facilitator, and part of the reason why I think that is because it's not necessarily that they're creating the content or creating the initiative, but rather they're kind of hoping to shepherd things forward in some certain type of way, but very much informed by the people that they serve or the people that they're involved with. Yeah, I mean, I think a community organizer is a really good listener, but they are also probably a good speaker, or at least a good networker, someone who takes initiative. And, to me, community organizing as opposed to other types of things in similar related fields, it's like there's a passion behind it. There's a reason, a purpose, a value behind the work that you do. And that's more the connotation that I take from community organizing. But yeah, that might be my quick spiel.
All right. Thank you. Let's go with Aaron.
Hi. For community organizer, I think of someone who loves to bring their community together and keep the folks in the community informed about the good and the bad things going on in the community, reaching out, staying informed on anything political or vice versa. And that's what I think when I think about a community organizer. Hi.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. And then let's try Toby.
My definition for community organizer would be someone that brings their community together, but not just bringing them together, but to think of ideas to improve the community by being together, not waiting for something or someone to make the difference, but actually getting up and making that difference yourself and encouraging others around you to also make that difference and providing the opportunity for them to make that difference. Because I know sometimes people do want to help out and do want to be involved and do want to be here, but they don't know what's going on. They don't know what needs to be met, or what's happening. So that's what a community organizer's position and job is to bring it to people's attention.
Got it. That's great, Kobe. Jarrell, how about you?
A community organizer to me, someone who pulls together resources to redistribute them to the community.
Got it. All right. Thank you. And then Marie, how about you?
To me, I think it's someone who lifts up equitable and beautiful visions of the individuals in the space. And an organizer is someone that strategizes, I guess, to build people-centered solutions, to build more cooperation and support and well-being in the world. And I also feel like it's about power, like bringing and building power to the people.
That's great. Thank you, Marie. And then how about Moon?
For me, a community organizer is, I feel like we've all touched on this just a little bit, but somebody of the people and for the people. Like, you got to be boots on the ground in there, seeing this stuff happen to want to change it, first of all. And then you got to be passionate about it and a little stubborn, because you're going to have those roadblocks in your way. It's got to be somebody who's not afraid to speak up, take charge, and push things in the right direction, because sometimes you're going to have that pushback. And yeah, somebody who wants better for themselves and go around. And I think the biggest part of that here in Detroit, because we have our way with outsiders that come in trying to change things up. So it's always better to have like those familiar faces, people that are from the neighborhood and you see on the block already, like trying to change and do better for these things, and able to motivate others in the neighborhood to do that as well.
All right. And then who am I missing here? Siobhan.
I believe that a community organizer is not only someone who may be a part of the community, but someone who is able to be empathetic to what the community needs and understanding how to make that happen and push it forward with honesty and truth and kindness for the community that they're trying to help, whether they are a part of it or not.
That's great. Let's see. Somebody help me. Stacy. How about you?
I'm gonna piggyback off of Moon and Siobhan with the boots on the ground, but also for the community. Sometimes being a community organizer will include kind of changing your focus to be more inclusive to something you might not have considered being a part of the problem, because you were so focused on just one thing, when a lot of times it's not just one thing, it's all the things, and you have to be open and be inclusion of a lot of the problems that go hand in hand that might have went under the radar.
That's great. Yes. Pivoting and flexibility. That's very important. Open minds. And then finally, we have Chuck.
So the definition of a community organizer to me would kind of be like voice of the people, because they take what they got from the community and they're able to send it up the ladder to the people that can actually change policies and make a difference. So they're just getting all the information, getting it, correctly to then be able to move it on up the ladder.
Excellent. This is great, guys. So there's a lot of common characteristics that you're all touching on. First of all, it's representation. It's about being able to put yourself in a space that is able to that is able to bring others inside, and that is able to allow people to speak up for themselves, whether directly to power themselves or through you. But that brings you to genuine honesty. That brings you to making sure that you are being authentic and truthful in the message that you're delivering, because you are representing others, not just yourself. And it is servitude and humility with an open mind. So I think that's really good. Also, Michelle, I realized that I saw while you were highlighting your notes section there, you were supposed to do this part, and my brain just goes in drive mode. So why don't you, first of all, Michelle, what were the common trends that you saw in all of everybody's definitions here?
Definitely the fact that in order to organize, it has to be centered around the community. They have to have a voice. And I was thinking about this when we were going over it. My definition of a community organizer is one who connects the links together to build a strong chain. I thought of it as, you know, everybody knows the show The Weakest Link, but an organizer is taking all of those links and bringing them together so that we can build a strong chain. And so, yeah, it makes it really important that the community's voice is heard in the midst of the organizing. So next thing we look at is, come on, click. Community organizing is, okay? It's a process that brings together the talents, resources, and skills of people in the community in order to increase their collective power, to act in common self-interest, and work for social change. It's when people are brought together to act in common self-interest. The important part about that is common. Can't have community if it doesn't have something in common. And then combining talents, resources, and skills of the people in that community. A lot of times we have people in our community who can bring something to the table, but they haven't had an opportunity to do so. So we give them that opportunity to bring their gifts to the table and increasing the collective power and working for social change. Back to building that strong chain. Sometimes there is a weak link, but if the links that surround it are strong, they can help to increase the strength in that change. So we're building collective power. And any activity involving people interacting with one another in a formal manner. So, you know, we cannot get the job done that we're trying to do if every chain is doing its own, every link is doing its own thing. But if we bring it all together, we can get something done. We can make our voices heard. And it is also organizing in the pursuit of a common agenda. And for energy democracy, that agenda is we want energy for all people. Yeah. So that's what community organizing is. Back to you, Rafael.
All right. Hold on, my screen was doing something funky there for a second. There we go. All right, so who is the community? There are, you know, many different, you know, kind of ways to define what is community. But just kind of like on a sociological perspective here to bring it into the space, it can be described in terms of three types. Primary community. That's when people are touching elbows and meeting daily. That's like your block, you know, that you have, you know, in your neighborhood, or maybe you live in a large apartment complex and you see people on the regular. It could also even be your own individual household people that you are more likely to interact with on a daily basis. But then there's the secondary community. When people have the opportunity to meet weekly, that could be at your local farmer's market. That could be at the post office. That could be when you are going to work. These are, not as frequent, but still it is creating a common connection between you two in terms of a larger scope of community. But then we get out further, which is called the tertiary community. It's an environment when people are more likely to meet monthly or maybe a little bit more often, but at least annually. So this could be your like a club that you're part of. You could be part of a regular volunteer organization. You could be part of an organizing drive at your church. It's basically anything that you meet on a monthly but larger scope kind of basis. And the thing that connects these folks is that it's the frequency of connection and meeting each other and being aware of that and maintaining those connections. Some take a little bit more work than others, but it still all serves one common value of community. So how does it take place? Community organizing generally takes place under various different kinds of structures, like a nonprofit organization that reaches out and engages people to action, like what we do here at Soulardarity. And sometimes that comes in the form of paid staff, or it could be in the form of volunteer community organizers, but they all are working on one thing, which is to help advance the process of community organizing through various different forms of facilitation. And that can be in the form of identifying a problem or set of problems, recognizing what is in front of you that needs to be improved. But then taking yourself to the next step, you need to identify the solution. So it's really difficult to get people organized from the get-go if you're not coming to the table with at least some forms of recommended solutions, because that is what inspires people to at least start engaging the process. But then once you get beyond that, you need to clarify your set of objectives that is going to get you to that solution. What are the individual steps of action, the building blocks that you need to take? And then what is going to be the strategy and approach behind those building blocks of action that you have presented to the community? Speaking of presentation, you need to have people that are able to get out there and share the good word about your strategy, about the issues, about the problems, and the objectives and action points that you need to take. And you need leadership to do that. So you need to develop it from the relationships amongst the people that are involved. And then you mobilize that public support that you've built over time. Eventually gets to a point where you start to hit a very effective level of critical mass. So you need to get them to start moving. You need to get them moving in collective action in concert with each other. And that is where you really truly start to launch the important steps of what is called a campaign. That is when you have an entire subsection of your community that is impacted by this issue, ready to start moving and to take a stake on those issues with their collective action. So, Michelle, why don't you go ahead and share with us, what is it typically used for?
Okay, Rafael. So what is community organizing used for? Well, for one thing, because community is made up of so many different areas, there are many different needs. So community organizing is usually focused on more than just resolving specific issues, because that specific issue has a lot of arms and legs to it. And the only way to get to the issue is to get through the arms and the legs. Community organizing is empowering all community members, often with the end goal of distributing power equally throughout the community. It is all inclusive, without hierarchy. One is not more important than the other. Excuse me, my allergies are acting up. Community organizing is a process where people who live in proximity to each other come together into an organization that acts as their shared interest. And that says it's personal, you know, because each person in that community is contributing to telling what the issue is and how the issue can best be resolved for their community. The goal of community organizing is to generate durable power for an organization representing the community, allowing it to influence key decision makers on a range of issues over time. This is the reason why community organizing is considered a skill in stakeholder engagement. So community organizing should be generational. When I think my second year working with Soulardarity, I made the statement that I wanted to make change in a way that when my children come along, they don't have to start from the bottom up. There will be a step for them to step up on and continue making that change. And then their children can continue making that change. So it's generational. And power and influence are the key aim of community organizing. We are building power in our community that will influence not only the community, but those that have influence the powers that be, number one, influence outlining communities around us, and hopefully influence the world. It should be making a change, and that's the bottom line. Power and influence are the key aim of community organizing. Back to you, Rafael.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we need to use, you know, with our power is to help others understand, you know, where their power lies. We cannot just, as community organizers, keep that focus and ability of power in ourselves, but we need to enable others with that. So we need to help people understand, you know, what are the main components that we're working with in our process of community organizing, so they can become community organizers themselves. You know, so we need to help people understand, you know, why is it that we organize? What is our mission statement? What is our focus? What is our vision? Everybody needs to be on the same page so that they can have that little elevator speech that they can share with others that will help that community organizing unit grow. There also needs to be a common level of agreement of what are the roles of our leaders, you know, of our staff, of our volunteers. Everybody, you know, has their lane, but at the same time, they're able to share their lanes with others, to not shy away from others, to bring other people into their lanes as well too. That's a problem that I sometimes have. I usually sometimes have the inability to, you know, invite other people to take on the load. That is something I'm learning, but it's critical that you have that support. And then also you need to constantly be growing, and everybody, you know, in the movement needs to understand that. So that is part of what their day-to-day is that they're drawing people in so they can help you with those lanes. Then you got to be smart and strategic. You need to develop all the individual issue campaigns, or one issue campaign that you're starting with, you know, with those action blocks and strategies. And you need to bring people in on that strategy. You need to have others be involved in the development of it and the understanding of it as well too. And then once everybody's on the same page, you need to give everybody a role to play in the execution of those actions. People don't want to be just sitting in meetings and learning about the issue and the problem. They already know about the problems. They want to get out there and start kicking some ass. They want to start getting a piece of that pie for their community. And so we need to put them into different points of actions. And then also at the same time too, the health of the organization is important. And what I mean by health is, yeah, physical health is important. We need to look out for each other and our physical health. That's why we step up in places when that weight or that load needs to be taken over by us, when somebody, is going through a difficult time, but also the environmental health of our organization is important. What I mean by that is that we all need to be respectful of each other, to recognize our equitability with each other and the importance of it. And we need to be in constant practice of it because we're all human beings navigating with each other through these really difficult issues. And then at the same time too, we need to be constantly creating leadership development opportunities and using those opportunities to build strong relationships with each other throughout the entire network. And then we need to be able to control our message. We need to be the ones that are able to not allow the powers that be to speak for us or to characterize us. So we need to know how to work with the media or to be able to communicate with others so that we are always the ones drawing the picture of our lives and not letting others do that for us. And then running good meetings. There's a lot of meetings involved in community organizing. If you look at Michelle and I's calendar, meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. Sometimes they're internal, a lot of times they're external. But meetings can be helpful, but they can only be as helpful if they are run well and efficiently and allows people to speak up for themselves and to be part of the solution. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what are the characteristics of community organizing. We've talked about participation and creating space for people. We need to make sure that we are staying democratic and that we are extending that democratic spirit to everybody involved. So we establish processes, participatory processes that are going to allow people to be part of the decision making. You also need to develop and expand community ownership. That means not just creating community ownership, around the organization itself, but around the issues as well too. They need to feel that it is a part of them and that they are understanding how it is going to impact their individual lives. And that will create empowerment and inclusiveness. It will also lead to collaboration and partnership because the more invested people are, the more they're going to want to have an impact on it. And then accountability. We need to have trust and honesty throughout, and our leadership needs to be transparent in order to establish that accountability. But also at the same time, sometimes it takes a little bit of courage from us as individuals to step up to our own leaders and say, hey, we see a misstep happening here. We want to be great driving back things on track, and this is what we need you to do. That is accountability. It goes both ways. And then development of traditional and non-traditional leadership. So leadership is not just about standing up in front of people and making fiery speeches. It's not just about, being able to press the buttons in the control room. There are non-traditional leadership tactics and skills that can be put throughout based on people's individual talents, because we have to rely on each other's specific expertises and absorb them along the way. And then expansion of community participation. We have to go past the quad. And we've been talking about this with a lot of our work. We can't just be working with environmental justice organizations. We can't just be sitting in the meetings, harumping each other and giving us each other thumbs up. We already agree on a lot of the things. We have to go out into the community that are not aware of these issues on the day-to-day like we are when we're obsessed with them. And then also we have to have an emphasis on social justice, social change that could always be connected back to the founding mission. We talked earlier today that everybody needs to establish that mission and that vision. Everything that we do needs to go back to that. That is our guiding stone. So before we move on to the 10 main concepts of community organizing, I do want to open it up to the room here, and with the question of, if you were a leader in a community organizing movement, what would you say is your lane? What would you say is your strength that you would want to help guide other people, that you would want the opportunities being open to you as a leader? So first, anybody that immediately had a thought come to mind, please volunteer to chime in.
I can chime in. This is Siobhan.
Hey, Siobhan.
There are 2 lanes that I would think that I would be good at. First of all, just like organizing events, as far as setting, primary setup, what it should look like, what it should be like, and also capturing content as well.
Got it. That's great. Anybody else?
I can help with events as well, as in finding like talent and resources to capture the event and also make it entertaining with various artists, DJs, photographers, the visual aspect of it.
Great. Anybody else?
I feel like everybody's still in my answer. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Process.
Oh no, I wasn't.
Sorry,
I
you were
was
breaking in now.
I was going to ask who was that was just talking, just so I can make mental notes.
Oh, okay.
This was Stacy.
Okay, so that was going to be my guess. Okay, yes, sir. I yield to you. I wasn't ready.
Well, yeah, what I was saying was what stuck out to me was working with the media, just because with what I do with photography and videography, that's already a big focus with a lot of the local artists I work with, is getting them more visibility and getting more eyes on what's being done in their communities and stuff like that. And like you guys are saying, that's a big part of what you're doing, because if you don't see the work, like the people who aren't directly involved don't know what we're doing and what we're accomplishing out there without evidence of it.
That's good. That's great. Prostel, I think you had something to chime in with.
I do. I'm actually glad that this is a running thing, because I do believe in getting down into the in the weeds, so to say, with the community. I know that my strength lies in my relationships in my community in Highland Park, with certain strategic spaces like Avalon. We just did our mental health fair there this year, and me and Shu have been friends for a long time, and Nadi, and I know that everybody on here has certain relationships with like specific people that we could tap into and utilize those relationships to come, to unify it on one agenda. But for me personally, my relationships, I'm one of the communities I am in is in the poetry community, so I know usually they're usually interested in any mic, what I'm saying, particularly if it's for a cause. And just any other activists. A lot of our values and our agenda aligns with a lot of things that are happening in the community. So tapping into that resource and experience. I've been doing this a little while. Like I said, I'm sure we have a ton of experience on here, but again, for myself, that's I know those are my strengths.
Right. Anybody else? I know that, For some of you, you're just starting to absorb this, and this is your first time. But if if you don't have an idea yet, that's okay. We'll be helping you develop that one-on-one. But is there anybody else anything that is starting to pop to their mind? Remember, this is not a commitment. This is just developing ideas.
Hi, this is Erin. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
I can help out with getting people signed up to participate and getting volunteers and help out with recruitment, because that's what I do now with Matrix Head Start. So I'm pretty good with that.
Great. It's a major building block in movement building.
So I, similar to a lot of people, I have a lot of experience in event management, working for like a music booker and promoter, also some like marketing and promoting things. Something that I don't think has been mentioned. So I also do a fair amount of journalism. And so as a writer, I feel pretty comfortable helping people make their messages heard. And so I love doing interviews. I love helping people make sure that what they're trying to say is clear. You know, I'll kind of like help clean it up for them, keeping the message the same, but still, just making it as clear as possible for them to get their message across. And I also consider myself to be a good communicator and facilitator. And those are things that I really like to help other people get better at too. And so, I've had some experiences in education, like teaching some 1-credit mini courses and such, like college courses. And I just really love that. It's like some of my favorite things I've ever done are, empowering people with knowledge and skills. And so if I can do that, that's probably, I'd say, a strength of mine.
Excellent. That's great. All right. How about one more person? We've got time for one more person. If not, that's okay too.
I think I felt aligned with a lot of what Rob said, of something I not only really enjoy, but see some strengths in, and deep listening to people and drawing out and bringing those narratives that can be communicated in not just the way that they want to hear, but that everyone can understand in an accessible and empowering way.
So you're talking about synthesizing or translating the movement for people, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like you kind of cut in and out, so I couldn't hear you totally clearly. Sorry. Trying to confirm what you were saying.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, this is fantastic. I'm so glad that, I know that I'm like kind of pushing you guys through a lot here. But the whole point is that even though this is, believe it or not, high level, it's the purpose is to start giving people ideas, to start figuring out where they feel that they can fit in the best. So, all right. So our 10 main concepts of community organizing. Let's go through this, Michelle. So we're doing okay on time, but yeah, we'll get through this together.
Okay, I'll try not to add too much narrative. When I was looking at this, I thought about something. When I look at the term energy democracy, I see two different things. I see energy as power and democracy as all people. So when you talk about organizing in the NDEM, I'm thinking of it in the terminology of power for all people. And we'll talk about that more when we go into the breakout. But how does this translate into community organizing? Well, the concept of power translates in the ability to make something happen. The way to build power is by getting people to understand the source of their social or political problems, and then devise solutions, strategies, and then take on leadership and move to action through campaigns that will concrete or solidify change. So that's the first concept. Second concept is, oh, I went too far, go back. Okay. The second concept is relationship building. Community organizing cannot be done in a vacuum. It takes all people in all areas of life to get things done. There must be an ongoing process of building relationships that support each other. And organizing relies on two different kinds of relationship. The first one is the one-on-ones, meeting to find out a person's passions and to create a strong connection that is sustainable over time. And actually, we just got a small glimpse of that just a minute ago as we shared what is passionate to us individually. The second is public relationships. Community power building organizations exist to build members' collective power, not their personal social status. And the result is a network of public relationships. And that is so important that it's not about you, it's about us working together. Third is leadership development. In order to keep things organized, someone must take the lead. But leadership development in community organizing looks a little bit different than in a corporation. Community organizing wants to develop every organizer to be a leader in their community, whether that is their family, neighborhood, or beyond. So leadership development is we must build a base of members. More people mean more power. Recruitment is crucial. And guide members to see the roots of the problems. A lot of times we're looking at the branches on the tree above, but we're not looking at what's causing it. And then get members to understand what organizing is, get people involved, and develop that base of members to be leaders. Leaders learn by doing. For example, recruiting new members, giving testimony, running meetings. And as organizers, you will be doing all of this. Move members to action. Action fosters commitment, builds strong organizations. Rafael just said, it's not enough to just be going to meetings. You got to be doing something. If they stick me in too many meetings, I tend to say, okay, I'm the turtle, I'm going in the shell. Next one is political education. Political education is a form of training about issues as well as about social movement and history that you engage in both formally in workshop sessions, dialogues, forums, and roundtable discussions, and informally in daily or regular contact with members and leaders. Through political education, you communicate the analysis or worldview of the organization. As in-dem organizers, we end up in spaces of legislators and talking to people that really do have power. And what we're doing is not bringing just our personal experience, but we're bringing to them the concerns of the organization. And so when Soulardarity shows up, they know, here they come. They're going to be talking about what's best for Highland Park. We're just going to be personal about it. Highland Park, okay. But in order to do that, you have to have some idea of what that politically looks like, okay? So move on to the next one. Come on, button. There we go. Number 5 is strategy. Overall approach to achieving objectives. You can't have a good idea if you don't have a way to make it come to life. All right. So it's the way or ways that a community power building organization uses its power to win what it wants. A campaign is a planned series of strategies and actions designed to achieve clear goals and objectives. Effective organizations are strategic in everything they do. They are always refining their power analysis and strategies. Research is an essential component before launching any campaign. And we've got one campaign, we're gonna talk about it later, coming up now. We are being extremely strategic because we want to win what we're asking for. And it's a good thing for every community. Okay, Ralph, you take the last 5.
Right. So I put these together on the same slide because they're so closely related to each other. So mobilization, it can be very simple. It's just the essential process of moving people to action. And the action part is where it gets a little bit more complex. It's about doing a public showing of an organization's power. This is going to be a very, very well displayed example if we do this right. On August 22nd, on Monday, with the Michigan Public Service Commission. And we'll be telling you about that very, very soon. But you will see, if we do this right, you will see an in-person example of what it means to show power in a very public way. Also, it means actions, it means, taking very strategic actions on your timeline of your campaign. So it's important that you are choosing wisely where you're putting your resources into what, and making sure that it's advancing the timeline. And then also, there's even strategy involved when you are acting as an individual to support a campaign or an organization. That can be coming in the form of many things, such as submitting public comment electronically or in person, making a donation, being able to lend a resource to an organization that may not involve you actively working with them every single day, but it will empower them through that action as an individual. But also there needs to be a constant focus in every action on the initial goals of why you're doing this in the first place. And that is to move power holders with the number of people that the organization represents. It goes back again to, power, it comes in strength of numbers. Then this goes without saying, everybody wants to win. We all want to win. Even our opposition wants to win, but we need to be more hungry for it, because the reason why we see communities able to create the wins that they do is because sometimes, unfortunately, it's because their backs are against a wall. And when your back is against a wall, you are going to do everything within your power to get away from that wall. Survival is critical. And sometimes that can be a powerful motivator for a group of people. When you have a group of people fighting for their survival and fighting for their rights, there is a massive explosive level of momentum behind that process, and it can lead you to really good odds of winning. Believe it or not, when resources are stacked against you, you still have a good chance, depending on the passion and the motivation of the people. And in order to harness that power, you need to have campaigns to deliver that win. Movement building. Groups that use their resources to engage in broader social justice activities that are not solely connected to winnable campaigns or the self-interest of community members. So what that means is that there are many different kinds of building blocks of people within that community organization, that there are allies, there are direct community members, there are resource supporters, but as long as you're able to bring that into a focus that will create momentum, that is what will lead you to that win. And then this is something that is so critical. I cannot stress this enough. Valuation. We do this every single day of our lives on a personal level. We're always introspectively evaluating ourselves, who we are as a human being, what consequences come with our actions, and how are we going to learn from those consequences to take shape of a better direction for our lives. The same thing applies to any organization. You have to be willing to humble yourselves, whether in the moment, the good moments or the bad moments, and look introspectively of the organization. So what that is it's a process of assessing your actions and determining what worked, what didn't, and what you would do differently next time. You want to make sure that in the next time, every single event that you do in the future is going to have a substantive effect on your mission, and that you are including in that process by sharing those stories with others. Because when you share introspective moments, even especially the imperfect moments with others, that builds trust and it encourages recruitment. Believe it or not, you can't always just share the wins. It also hones and builds your skills. It also focuses on your standards of excellence of everyone in the organization, because you have to have those benchmarks of respect, equity, and also the quality of work that you agree together to do as an organization. In community organizing, and Michelle is aware of this, and I'm sure Prostel and Marie is, they've heard this term used several times before. We like to use the term debriefing. The reason why debriefing is a term that we use is because it implies almost like a level of immediacy of when you communicate after something happens. The more fresh it is in your mind, the better. And it takes a lot of discipline in terms of, like sometimes you feel tired after something is done. Sometimes both physically or maybe even emotionally or both. But it's important that we have the collective discipline to be able to come together after something happens and being able to debrief in an honest and authentic way with each other. But at the same time, we are being consistent in how we learn from those things by reporting it carefully. All right, so next up is the 4 strategies of addressing community problems. Michelle, do you want to give me a break here for a second and take on the first 2 here?
Sure thing. There are generally 4 ways to approach community problems. And with each one, it has its own mission, strategies, and impact. The first one is social services, then advocacy, then community development, and organizing. In addressing community problem.
There we go.
Pardon me?
Nope, go ahead. I was just having a problem with my clicker.
In addressing community problems, using these 4 strategies, the first one is social services. The mission of social service is to meet immediate, direct needs. What they do is provide goods such as food, clothing, and services that would be needed to help someone overcome that problem. And a sample strategy of this is developing self-help skills among service recipients or community members, providing case management in order to meet those needs holistically, guiding people through applications for benefits and other complex systems with one-to-one advocacy. And the impact is primarily on the individual, usually short term, although some long-term effects are possible. When you give someone, thinking of long-term effects, there is a saying, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach him to fish, he can eat for the rest of his life. And so that's how the long-term effect hopefully would be. The effect on power structures is there's no real change. And they refer to this constituents as clients or consumers. The next one is, I gotta go to my screen. Advocacy. And the mission of advocacy is to speak out on behalf of those whose voices have been silenced and they cannot speak for themselves. To protect or obtain rights, goods, or services, usually specified for an interest group. What they do is craft or react to legislation, address elected officials and policymakers. And we do a lot of that in India, as I said earlier, because it is the legislators and policymakers that affect our access, our universal access to energy. Sample strategies are participating in issue-based coalitions, educating the public, giving public testimony, lobbying elected officials in a good way, not a bad way, collaborating with researchers and lawyers.
You don't got the money for that.
The impact is on interest groups, usually medium to long-term effects. And the effects on power structures is power structures change moderately due to changes in laws and policies. And we see that happen. If you're listening to the news, we see that happening every day. And how they refer to their constituents is as
Oops. I think we missed that last part you said there, but yes, it's you hear it very common, by our politicians, elected officials, my constituents. That's because you're their constituents, and that is how you should be viewed as in their eyes, because they're there to serve you. So the third one is community development, and this is really to take a infrastructure approach towards our communities, a physical infrastructure approach. We also engage with that too, as you're probably going to learn. Communities Leap is one example of it that you'll be getting more information of. And that is really critical to be able to create any kind of impact with the issues that we have, because a lot of our issues are very cemented in our community's physical infrastructure. So what is it that is entailed to make those changes happen? It's usually followed through by finance or housing construction, our businesses and our communities, our local parks, or other different kinds of community resources. And then some of the strategies that are used to approach physical infrastructure is engaging in community planning, analyzing economic impact, and training constituents to acquire skills for planning, business development, and property management. It is important that our communities take shape as the community, and unfortunately, sometimes that's not always followed, and we most commonly refer to that as gentrification, as some of you are very aware of. Impacts. So what the kind of impact that it has on individuals and communities are both immediate to long-term effects. The sustaining impact is tied to our financial resources, both good or bad. And the effects on our power structures are that they change moderately. Usually, the only way that we can make that moderate change is by utilizing community participation, as was mentioned in the sample strategies portion here. And of course, we refer to the constituents as the community. And that brings us to community organizing. This is our method. So it is to build power and to create change, as you already know. So what is it that we do to build that power and to create change? We recruit, we train, and we mobilize a large base of members directly affected by the organization's issues. And sample strategies are creating membership structures in which constituents are organizational decision makers, developing strategic campaigns, engaging in direct actions such as demonstrations, directly holding public and corporate officials accountable for their actions, and forming alliances to build power, which we are part of several alliances and coalitions. And then the impact that this kind of approach has is on individuals, communities, and often others that have similar concerns that may not necessarily be in your community. And these have medium to long-term effects. It all depends on how well organized your organization is so that future generations can continue to use that vehicle of change. And then what effect does it have on our power structures? It will change power structures as power shifts to community members, which is our ultimate goal. With DTE, we want to give them the boot. We want to take the power out of their hands, and we want to put the power of power in the hands of community through community-owned energy generation. And how do we refer to our constituents? They are our leaders and they are our members. All right. So, Michelle, who is a community organizer? Okay.
Okay. For some reason, my phone kicked off and I couldn't get back on.
Okay. We are, yep, there we go.
Okay. Community organizers generally assume that social change necessarily involves conflict and social struggle in order to generate collective power for the powerless. Community organizers work with and develop new local leaders, facilitating coalitions and assisting in the development of campaigns. And as Rafael just said, you know, you're going to hear more about this because we are in the process of actually doing this. You guys have came in at a fantastic time to just jump right in with both feet and get to working. Because we're as we sit here today, we're developing you as leaders, and we are working with our partner organizations to facilitate coalitions. And we are about to put on a huge campaign to bring about some change. And I'm really looking forward to it. You know, I like to fight. Rafael knows I like to fight.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
The three basic tasks of an organizer. Number one, continuing education. All right. It is so important to stay up to date about what is happening, how it's happening, and where it's happening. An example of that, because I'm in DIM and because DTE is the focus right now, an example of that is if you see DTE commercials on TV, they're very deceptive because what's going on behind the scenes is totally different. So if you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, you don't see a reason to fight DTE. I actually spoke with some folks and I asked them the question, are you happy with DTE? And they said, yeah. Because they didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. So you have to stay aware. The task verbs here are inform and agitate. Staying informed about what's actually happening and then using that information to agitate, not in a bad way, but in a good way, to get that information to the community so that they see a reason for speaking up and using their voice. Consolidation and expansion. The task verbs here are organize and spread. Again, we're coming together to build this very strong chain, but as we build the chain, we want to add more links to it. So we have to spread the word about what we're doing. And then number three, mobilizing organizations, or community for common interests. And the task verbs here are assemble and move. So as we are preparing for what Rafael was talking about, the public hearing, we are assembling as many people as possible to come together. But once we do it, action got to go forth. We got to move with it, and we got to do something with it. And so that is making sure that the people we assemble also move towards being an active part of the public hearing. Back to you, Ralph.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to blast through this because we're now coming to a point where people are probably getting hungry and they're ready to eat. So I'm going to go over the brief organizing process. One, preliminary research, as we mentioned before, you must know what are the risks and opportunities that are ahead of you to help you formulate your strategies. Two, contact building. That is the first critical starting component of relationship building. You have to expand and network. And then once you're past that point, or you feel that you're far ahead enough on that point, you need to start conducting trainings. You need to have facilitators to do the training. You need to have speakers to do to be trained up on how to do public speaking. You need leadership to be fostered and grown through training. And also you need to beef up on what's going on in our political, economic, and cultural environments that are out there, and also other areas as well too. You need to then take that training and bring in people a little bit further outside of the scope of organizing, and start to create preparatory committees, or prepcoms as they sometimes are called. Those are your organizing committees. Those are your planning committees. I know that we hear a lot about committees sometimes, and so it sometimes could be falling into the trap of creating too many. So when you are creating these committees, you need to remind yourself as a leader, is this going to be meaningful work for people that are going to be involved in it? And does that lead straight back to the meaningful action steps that are necessary for your strategy? And then also, in order to maintain respect in the organization, especially when it starts to grow into a large level, you need to have some form of an agreement, a formal agreement that comes through either a constitution or a charter. It will be a guidelines on how to establish and maintain accountability, transparency, and respect, and more importantly, truth. And then you conduct your general assemblies, or as we like to call them, our membership meetings, where we're going beyond just our Highland Park campaign team, or we're going beyond, our board or executive committees. We are engaging the whole membership as a whole to bring them up to speed about what's going on, what are we doing behind the scenes, and what is it that we are asking them to do with us. And then launching of community-based projects. These, all these steps that you take here are going to eventually lead to the actual public launching of a campaign. And then you're going to need the support of your allies and your coalitions, which we are a part of, that you will be engaging with as well too. I'm not going to go through this, but this is basically a visual representation of what we went over. I think that, me being visually reliant on things like this, it helps remind me about what are the different processes that we need to go through, but also at the same time, making sure that we're coming back to our original goal and connecting it to it, and being able to identify all the different activities accurately and clearly in the type of activity that it is. And like Rob asked, yes, we will be sharing this presentation with everybody. I know it was so long, but I feel like I wanted to fit in as much as I could. For some people, it takes, there are academies that takes months of community organizing training, and unfortunately we don't have that time. But these are, some terms to remember that will help you, in terms of your organizing language, when you're both speaking it or listening to it. And we'll be sharing this with everybody in this presentation so that they'll have access to it. All right. So before we break for lunch, does anybody have any questions or reactions to what we just went through? I just want to give people a chance to talk. What would you say? What would you say is an area that you feel like that you would want growth the most in a lot of those building components that we mentioned about community organizing? Just to kind of, like recap real quick, that's power, relationship building, leadership development, political education, strategy, mobilization and action, winning, and movement building, and then evaluation. Was there any parts of those 10 concepts or building components that stood out for you in terms of what you feel like you'd be strong in? And was there something that you feel like that you would need growth in?
I think the political aspect is somewhere I would need growth in personally, because I'm like good with building the relationships and being active in the community. But as far as like legislation goes and stuff like that, I'm not always 100% on the up and up with what's going on that front.
Got it.
I think this is Marcel. I think, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I think that one thing that I feel like I'm good at, but also I feel like it's the type of thing that you can never get good at. I mean, get good enough at to not do, and that's it was the I don't remember the language you used. The thing that comes to mind is lifelong learning, meaning continuing to educate myself on whatever topic it is. So even as we get ready to go into this season, I'm already in my head like, okay, I know some of the conversations I'm going to be having. So I'm really like, man, I need to like dig back in terms of just finding out what's happening with Soulardarity. I know we're making a lot of good strides, and there's a lot going on in Highland Park, like was alluded to right now. So I think continuing to educate myself, not only on the subject matter, but also in terms of the community, right? Because we can't get so engrossed in what we're doing that we're not paying attention to, what's going on in the community right now. What issues are rising and impacting people's lives that we need to make sure that are on our radar? Because again, if we're saying we're serving the community, then we got to stay tapped. The information has to flow both ways. So I think that continuing to educate myself, continue to educate ourselves as a collective is really key. It's like we probably already good at it, but we have to really, really commit ourselves to continuing to do that.
Anybody else?
I would say political education as well.
Thank you, Terrell.
This isn't
any other thoughts?
This isn't necessarily like personal for me, and I'm not sure it's like it's not quite like you're good at it or not, but I think the winning aspect, it's an interesting and complicated one, right? And the reason why is because we need to have results. That's what the work is. And I feel like the difference between a group that's really about it versus a group who likes to talk about it and is a little bit fluffier or a little bit gentler is that they're not necessarily thinking about winning. And maybe on the other hand of that, they're not thinking about what they have to lose, what they stand to lose. And so I think, but winning can be really complicated because it looks very different in different contexts. And so we need to take the wins when we can get them, strive for the wins that, we want and what we need. understand that progress is a complicated process. And I just know for me, like in the environmental space, that's a thing that I've had to deal with a lot, you know, climate anxiety, all of these things. It's really easy to get hopeless. It's really easy to ruminate on the losses. And so I just think it was helpful to see it in that, you know, organized within all of those bullet points. And yeah, I think it's just a part of doing the good work, you know, in general, like in whatever sphere you're in, is understanding your relationship with winning and how to maintain hope, you know. So yeah, more just, I guess, thoughts. But
yeah, in other words, don't sugarcoat, but also don't neglect the both the small wins along with the large wins. Use it to keep momentum going no matter what.
yeah.
Got it. Okay. Anybody else? We got room for one more. Okay. All right. Seems like everybody wants to get lunch. I do too. So let's go ahead. We're still, you know, even though we're a little bit behind, everybody deserves their full time 30 minutes of lunch. I don't know if this video is going to work too. Yeah, I'm going to start a little timer. Go ahead and take yourself off camera if you want. Put yourself on mute. And remember, if you have put in an order with like a lunch delivery or something like that, please let me know and we will compensate you on that. So yeah, everybody enjoy their 30-minute lunch break.
Cool. See everybody at 30.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. First of all, turn in your outstanding paperwork. Apologies again for the late sending of the DocuSigns, but you should have it by now. So if you haven't filled it out yet, haven't been checking it recently, but if you haven't done so, please do so before the end of the weekend so we could get you paid on Tuesday, because remember, you're going to be getting your first stipend payment on Tuesday, okay? So your next piece of homework that we're going to be sending in a follow-up email to you, don't worry, you're not going to have to keep track of this stuff all on your own, but but the next piece for your homework is you're going to be watching a video about the utility structure system in the country, and that will help prompt you with a good foundational understanding for when we go about it in more in depth in next Saturday's training. And then you're also going to be doing a reading exercise for the Hermes principles. The Hermes principles is a system of guiding stones that many organizations use to basically establish and maintain an air of respectability and equitability amongst organizations such as ours. And these are really good guiding stones, not just to be using internally with groups like this, but it's just basically a really good overall philosophy to have when you're engaging with community issues and you're trying to mobilize people. It can be both applicable on a organizing level and on a personal level as well too. I believe that was it. Let me double confirm to make sure here. Did we cover everything? We sure did. All right. We are 10 minutes over.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Siobhan.
Okay, my question is, as far as the time that we're supposed to contribute, the 5 to 20 hours, how is that tracked? And as far as the homework is concerned, do we have to track the time that it took for us to complete those assignments? And are those considered a part of the time that we're giving back to be a part of the organization?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, Siobhan. So when it comes to the actual individual basis tracking. We'll be doing that on a one-on-one basis when either I meet up with my Highland Park organizers or when Michelle meets up with her energy democracy organizers. And we're going to be having, you know, an individualized time tracking tool, mainly because not because like we want to be like micromanaging people. That's not the important part for us. You guys are doing this because you are right off the bat, you know, wanting to be a part of a solution. But it's more so that we can track equitability in terms of the work that's being done. So if something, you know, is taking you over, you know, the time that you have available, either the time that is between that range of 5 to 15 hours, we need to know about that. And we need you to communicate that to us. So we want to give you a tool that will help you to be able to communicate that to us so that we can figure out how to work with you to be able to enable you to be able to use the time that you have, but still be able to produce something that's going to help the work that we're doing as a whole. And
Does that
then
answer your
what
question,
was that? There
Siobhan?
was a second part to your question, Siobhan. Please remind me.
Oh, no, you answered my question.
Okay,
Oh,
I don't know
yeah,
why I
you
felt like
answered the
there was.
question.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Just wanted to be short, but if there was a second part to it, we both forgot about it, and you wanted to answer it after all, please feel free to contact me, and I'll be able to answer your questions. So yeah, like I said, we're going to be sending follow-up email after this training that is going to be having all the resources that we had just exposed to you today and then some. And then also it's going to be containing your next steps on homework assignment. It's really easy stuff. Like I said, it's a 30-minute video and probably like a 15 to 30-minute read. It's not going to be taking up a lot of your time. And then in regards to this week, don't worry, there's not going to be any direct campaign stuff that we're going to be doing right away. But there will be one little task that we're going to be asking you to help contribute with. And we'll be explaining that in the email as well too. So, oh shoot, I saw a whole bunch of chats pop up. I hope that I'm not ignoring everybody. Okay, cool.
No, you're
Great.
good, Rafael. They were just talking about the time.
Perfect.
Real quick, I am resharing the link for the interview on the Today Show in the chat. If you get a chance, take a look at it.
Yeah, Mama Shu, Shamika, you know, they're all in it. Showcases Avalon Village with all compliments of a reporter with a non-regional accent that you usually see, you know, in the news. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and also hopefully your interest and hopefully your patience because it was very jam-packed. But like I said, if there's any need for any follow-up, Michelle and I have an open door with our email and our phone. Don't hesitate to contact us and keep an eye out for your inbox, okay? And turn in your paperwork if you haven't done so yet.
Thank you all so much. Nice to meet you. Take care.
You too. Everyone stay safe.
All
Yeah,
right,
you
everybody have a
too.
great
Thank you.
weekend.
Stay safe,
Nice meeting
everyone.
with
You
everybody.
too.
Y'all
Take
take
care.
it
Be
easy.
safe.
Saturday vibes. Saturday vibes.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
See, everybody just my daughter being crazy in the background.
You got those vibes already.
Y'all take it easy.
You too, man. All right. What'd you think? Oh yeah, let's stop the recording.